Hey everyone, thank you for waiting. It's about that time. It's 2:05, and we'll begin our Dean's speaker series with Miss Michelle Hanlon. But before we begin, this is the very first Dean speaker series where we're having it in a high flex mode. So we have a live audience here as well as a virtual audience. We're getting close to 25 people. Just want to recognize some people in the virtual room. We have the president of the University of Guam, Dr. Thomas Price. And then we have some SBPA faculty. I want to recognize Dr. David Lee. Thanks for coming. There you can see Dr. Price on screen. Today, Dr. Price. Yeah, today, Dr. G. And let's not waste any more time, and we can actually move on to the dean of the School of Business and Public Administration, our boss, Dr. Annette Song.
Happy day, everyone. Thank you, Julian, and thank you, Iris, and our SBPA team for coordinating this event and ensuring that we provide opportunities for people to access it online and allowing for the maximum opportunity for those to participate in person. I hope that everyone is doing well and you and your families are exercising the required health practices. We cannot emphasize that enough to continue to protect yourself against the coronavirus. I want to personally welcome you to today's speaker series. It is one of my relished pleasures to host the SBPA Dean Speaker Series throughout the Fanchanan and Fananakin semesters. At this event, if it's new to you, we get to feature distinguished local and regional leaders and professionals who get to talk about the latest trends in the industries in which they operate. And through these series of speakers, it's my hope that the integration between theory and practice is realized. And so during these sessions, I encourage you to take notes, jot down any questions that you may have, participate in the conversation, because you have a unique opportunity to engage directly with our speaker. And I hope that you will embrace this learning experience. I invite you to be curious, ask questions, and share your high-level thoughts and comments as we go along. Okay, so let's get on with the program. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome today's featured speaker, Michelle Hanlon. Michelle L.D. Hanlon is co-director of the Air and Space Law program at the University of Mississippi School of Law and its Center for Air and Space Law. She is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Space Law, the world's oldest law journal dedicated to the legal problems arising out of human activities in outer space, and the faculty advisor for its sister publication, the Journal of Drone Law and Policy. Michelle is co-founder and president for All Moonkind, Inc., which is a nonprofit corporation that is the only organization in the world focused on protecting human cultural heritage in outer space. In this capacity, she was instrumental in the development of the recently enacted One Small Step Act in the US. For All Moonkind has been recognized by the United Nations as a permanent observer to the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Michelle is also the president of the National Space Society and a mentor to the newly formed National Space Society Legal Fellows Program, which we hope to hear about later today. She was recently named as an advisor to the Hague Institute for Global Justice Off-World Approach. Michelle received her BA in Political Science from Yale College and her Juris Doctorate magna cum laude from Georgetown University Law Center. She earned her LLM in Air and Space Law from McGill University. And prior to focusing on aviation and space law, Michelle was engaged in a private business law practice. Her legal career commenced with the restructuring of sovereign debt for a number of South and Latin American countries and evolved into the negotiation and implementation of cross-border technology mergers and acquisitions. Her subsequent solo practice advised entrepreneurs across 4 continents on all aspects of bringing their innovative ideas to market, from basic corporate finance or formation to financings and to buyouts. So before we turn the floor over to Michelle, I want to gauge the audience's knowledge with regard to today's topic. So can someone in the audience tell us in the chat what UAV stands for? Maybe Julian or Iris, you can tell me if we get a response. UAV, what does that stand for? Any responses? I have an incentive. There is a prize. No takers? Excellent. Who is that? Okay. Dr. G, you get a coupon or gift certificate to the campus cafe down here. So come check us out for that. Okay. So it's important to understand what the topic is and the terminology being used. So UAV is going to be a word you're going to hear throughout today's presentation. So I thought Michelle's intimate and fundamental knowledge of events related to the space economy and the UAV industry and its relevance to our local, regional, national, and international spheres would make for a great learning experience for our audience. And so you have a commendable and admirable career, such a great leader in terms of the milestones that you've achieved, and your service experience is just amazing. So we think that that would be a perfect foundation for today's speaker series, and I'm happy that you could join us today. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here. I have to warn you, I'm very, very passionate about air and space law, and air and space technology, and I tend to go on and on and on. So just cut me off and tell me, okay, we need to move on. But I will echo the doctor and say, please, this is about contributing and starting a discussion. I'm here to answer any questions you have about UAVs or drones and space and the space economy, space station, all of the technologies that we use here on Guam and in the United States and all around the world. If you go to the next slide, I just thank you for that wonderful introduction. I just wanted to share with everybody a little bit more about the University of Mississippi. There's ours in Mississippi. There's McGill University in Montreal and Leiden in the Netherlands. And so we are really in a very unique position, and we are really poised on this threshold to the future, because aviation, we've all seen, has brought the world much, much closer together, and that aviation technology has changed the way we live. And space technology is about to do the same thing. Drone technology also about to do the same thing. We really, I'm so excited for this generation of students, because you guys have like this incredible universe ahead of you to explore with the newest, most innovative tools we've ever seen. Next slide, please. I just wanted to also say, so For All Moonkind is an NGO, a non-governmental organization, nonprofit that I started with my husband. We were, within the first year, we were awarded the position by the United Nations of being a permanent observer. And within our second year, we were able to get legislation passed, which actually recognizes for the first time in the world, first time in the universe, that there are human artifacts in space, that there's human cultural heritage in outer space. And that's really, really important. I think, I've seen all around this island, a lot of the heritage that, that is protected and safeguarded and highlighted. And we need to do that on the moon and on Mars and wherever we go, so that our future selves remember that and are grounded and anchored by it. And right now, those blueprints, the Tranquility-based landing, the first landings from Luna, the Russian, Soviets, none of that is protected. And that to us, that is just a travesty. Next slide, please. And finally, the National Space Society is what we call the citizens organization. We at the National Space Society are really focused on getting humanity into space. We want to be the generation that creates a spacefaring species. And so I encourage you, if you're at all interested in space, if you get a spark from this conversation, to join the National Space Society. We have weekly forums talking about things like the space shuttle technology, the space policy of the Artemis Accords, the the technicalities of Artemis. So it spans everything from policy to engineering to science. So next slide, please. So I'm going to start with drones or UAVs. And we're actually, I will say, you know, we're talking about diversity. We are trying to move the world to say uncrewed aerial vehicles instead of unmanned. So, you know, it's our little soapbox at Mississippi. Next slide, please. So this is what most people think of when they think of drones. And drones are in the news all the time, right? Because, for example, a few weeks ago, the tragedy in Afghanistan when the drones took out some civilians. But, you know, the original use of drones was this military presence. And so people automatically have sort of a abhorrent reaction to drones because they're frightening looking, and they were originally used to kill people. They are military instruments. But things have changed quite a bit. Next slide, please. Now we have all sorts of utilizations of drones. We use drones to deliver packages, from the deliver pharmaceuticals. We use drones to actually go in and disinfect stadiums, right? We use drones, little teeny drones, to disinfect hospital rooms. We use drones to deliver library books. So there are tons of ways, especially in the time of COVID, when we were trying to reduce that human interaction, that we were able to use drones. Next slide, please. And even more fundamentally, we use them for building inspections. We use them to look at areas that we can't see, and that's something so important for Guam, right? We use them to, you can use them to look at the interior, to judge the vegetation, the growth, without having to, and believe me, I've crawled through a bunch of it, you know, without having to crawl through it yourself. And in Rwanda, they use drones to deliver blood from hospital to hospital. So they take a 6-hour drive on back roads and they turn it into a half-hour drone delivery. And so this is just some of the ways, and this is just scratching the surface of what UAV technology can do. Next slide, please. But, and this is where, as a business person, you really have to think about what you do with drones. When you embrace technology, there are always some negative sides. With respect to UAVs, there's concerns about privacy. People get nervous when they see drones being operated by policemen. People think, wait, what are you're spying on me? What are you doing that for? And so there's this reaction against drones. And so when you think about embracing technology, you have to remember that you also have to bring people with you. And it's really important to communicate that exactly what you're going to do. Next slide, please. And especially in COVID, we just talked about how wonderful drones have been for COVID, but now there's a pandemic drone that actually can take your temperature from the sky. And they're using it in China, and they take it outside of office buildings or residential buildings, and they tag who has a high temperature and prevent them from leaving the apartment, you know, at all. And so, boy, they tried to introduce this in Connecticut, and not even to go into somebody's house, but just to, you know, fly above you to see if you have a temperature. And the ACLU was involved. There were massive protests. So again, there's a lot of benefits to this technology that you can think of, but there's always a downside that you have to be prepared for. So this company that created the pandemic drone didn't really think it through. They just brought it to market, and they sold it and tried to sell it to police stations. They should have sold it to hospitals, right? They should have had the health workers say, yes, we need this, it would be really helpful, and not through that national security, that security surveillance concept. Next slide, please. And of course, my favorite, drone taxis, right? What a great way to get amongst the islands in the South Pacific, right? Autonomous aerial vehicles. How fun would that be? They're testing them in South Korea right now. There's testing them in Dubai. Those are just sort of city hoppers, but I see a time, you know, where you said if we go to Palau one day, we have to stay there for 5 days. Of course, who would want to leave? Right. But maybe this kind of transportation, it's clean, you know, it's electric, it's autonomous, it would be a lot cheaper. And I think, again, the way we've seen aviation make the world smaller, this kind of UAV technology is also going to do that. Next slide, please. And then I'm just going to talk quickly about space and then we'll open it up for discussion. Next slide, please. So in the news again, Inspiration 4, the first civilian space mission. These were all individuals who are not part of any government. Dr. Proctor is actually born in Guam, and her parents worked, her father worked for NASA. And so this is, when you think about space, it's not just way up there, it's right here. And they're doing a lot of work that would benefit us here on Earth. Next slide, please. And of course, I had to show Guam's contribution to history. This was the last communication that Apollo 11 had before it landed. So Guam was instrumental in making sure the first humans who made it into the moon came back safely. And there's actually the story of, there was a ball bearing that was loose and nobody could fit their arm in. So they found the chief technologist's son, and he reached his arm and greased the ball bearing so that we could actually get the communication and make sure they landed safely. So Guam has a rich history in space already. Next slide, please. I talk a lot about why space. We have a lot of people who will say, we have so many problems on Earth. Why are we spending all this money on space? And it's a waste of money for Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But everything we do in space has had a benefit on Earth. And NASA has a magazine called Spinoff that it is printed every year since 1976. You can find it online. It's about, if you print it, it's about 250 pages of all of the things that year alone space technology helped to do. So we have everything from, like bridges are protected from corrosion, pacemakers, we have better communications, we have ATM machines and so forth. So I really encourage you to go and look at all of the things that we have and we think of as routine that we have because of space. Next slide, please. And again, space is good business. It's going to be a $1 trillion business by 2040. It's time to get involved in space. Space was also COVID proof. The space economy did not suffer under COVID the way the aviation industry did. Next slide, please. And finally, you guys might get a spaceport. Virgin Galactica, they just this last week, I think, got the environmental approval to be able to launch small satellites. And so, today's small satellites, maybe tomorrow tourists, but this is an industry that Guam is really well poised to take advantage of because of your position and your ability to get things into the right orbits. Next slide, please. And of course, a lot of people say to me, well, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a scientist. How can space affect me? How's it going to help me? Well, we have now a company that is building a private space hotel. And so everything we do on Earth, we're going to have to do in space. Hospitality, thinking about all of the mechanics that go into it. How are they going to eat? We need chefs in space. We need fitness providers in space. All of these things need to be shifted to space, and now's the time to start doing it. So I think that was it. Next slide, I think. Yes, so thank you. That's my spiel on, this is it, aviation and space.
That is just so phenomenal. First of all, let me tell you that, you just piqued my interest and my curiosity about the many elements that surround the space economy and how businesses or entrepreneurs and innovators could participate in that realm. If you were to identify maybe some opportunities for people wanting to provide some sort of business opportunity that relates to the space economy, are there some things that are top of mind that are in high demand that folks can maybe start thinking about? And we're out here in the Western Pacific, and what are some ideas that you might be able to share with people on this side of the world that will help us play a part in the development of the space economy?
So what's really wonderful about the space economy is everything is getting cheaper. It's getting cheaper to launch. It's getting cheaper to build satellites. And is it Murphy's Law? I forget whose law it is that technology gets smaller and smaller. So now things that used to take a satellite the size of this room to be able to do, you can do on a cube satellite, 12 cubic inches, 12 by 12 cubic inches. I'm not an engineer. But that is a great and very inexpensive platform. $25,000. What do people want? People want that small satellite to be able to have infrared cameras and look down. They want to know. They want to be able to launch them to cover certain areas of the world. They want to think about. We just saw all these ways you could use UAVs, right? So I don't want to put. I mean, what could you use if you had your own satellite in space? What would you do with it? We have university students in Canada who are creating a special satellite with a special camera that can see through clouds. And what they have done is they've taken two technologies and put them together. They're not all engineers. They just said, "Wow, we have this technology here. We have it here. Let's marry it." They've just got invested. They got, I think, a $25 million investment. You know, we have a team in the U.S. who thinks, well, what if we put arms on a CubeSat and take selfies from space? You know, and that's a great tourism opportunity. Even just, you know, here on Guam to say, hey, you know, send something to space and take a picture of it and you'll have it forever. So those are the ways. The other way to get involved in the space economy is to really look at what, like, NASA has a lot of opportunities. They right now are running a food competition. Help us figure out how to feed astronauts who are going to be living on the moon and orbiting the moon for 4 or 5 months at a time. The food needs to be compressed. They don't want it to be bland and so forth. Fitness, you know, we have people working on space suits, the fabrics, how should they be made? So fashion designers would be really useful in space to figure, you know, out. I don't know if you saw the Space Force uniforms, but I kind of felt like, oh, you know, I could have done a little bit better, right? So, like, really, if you have a skill, if you have an interest here terrestrially, it will apply to space.
I'm just blown away by all of this information. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, so one of our students, is gonna project it a little bit louder, so don't forget for us. So the other audience members can hear, but as business students looking into businesses that require the use of drones today, what limitations or red tape do you think we would face?
So drones are really interesting right now because we don't have the biggest issue from the public standpoint is privacy. People are very, in a way, when you think about the fact that we give up so much information on our phone, people, I think, feel comfortable with the phone because it's always by you. But if you see a drone fly over, you immediately think, oh, wait, you know, stop taking pictures of me, stop imaging. So thinking about the privacy, there's no federal law that blankets how privacy is treated. It's state by state. And so you really need to look, and sometimes it's locality by locality. So you need to see what the laws are wherever you're going to operate. The other issue, though, is on top of all of this privacy concerns, the drones are heavily regulated by the FAA. The FAA's main idea, the Federal Aviation Administration, their main concern is the safety of airspace. So they don't care about your business. That's not their job. They're there to make sure your drone doesn't fly into an airplane that's landing. And so right now there is no regulatory agency that has, you know, there's like no Department of Commerce for drones. There's no regulatory agency focused on helping this industry grow. And so I think, you know, for the most part, it's really that, okay, you have to make it through these safety regulations imposed by the FAA. You've got to get your Part 107 license. You've got to make sure your drone has remote ID. You've got to make sure you're getting exemptions for where you want to do. And you really, you know what, the FAA regulators are the nicest people on earth. They want your drone business to work, and they're going to help you. They will stay on the phone with you for hours to make sure you're filling things out right. The key is, and I tell this to businesses all the time, is people always say, oh, the lawyers are the last thing we need. That's not true. Lawyers can take a process that will take you 5 or 6 iterations and do it right the first time. You know, so sometimes it's really good to invest in a good lawyer. A lot of times you'll find a good lawyer who will do it pro bono. Just saying. I think, yeah, ML Hanlon at olemiss.edu. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, it says, have you heard of any ideas on how drones can make operations more efficient? I think this is one of our public
I think I think anything we can do for the government can make it more efficient, right? Yeah, absolutely. The drone, the best way to think about it for government efficiency would be the inspections. And so if we can reduce the amount of human inspectors that we need to go out into the fields, we can reduce the time spent waiting for those inspections. You don't need, what you do is you just get a fleet of drone operators who will go and completely circle an item, a tower, a wind turbine, a bridge, and then you have experts actually go and look at it. So in a way, you're actually creating jobs by giving all these drone operators this opportunity, and you reduce the load on experts, so they can just be looking at the footage. So really, that's the best way. The other thing, when you talk about drones in the government, UAVs is delivery of materials and the national security, private policing. It really, in COVID, I know a lot of people were concerned, but think about how much safer it was for your policewoman to send a drone into a crowd to see what was going on instead of having to wade through the crowd themselves. And so that's another way, again, you can multiply your police force using drones.
So this question was about I think it was referencing the hotel. What would be, I guess, the regulations? Like, who would be the overseeing body in terms of laws and out in space, for example, nations, or would it be the country in which the created the hotel?
Yep, absolutely. And it's a great question. So space law is actually public international law. And so, when we talk about space, the laws that were formed about space activities were guided to sovereign states only, so we have these 5 treaties. Space laws is a really tiny body of law, which is why I love teaching it, because there's not a lot to read, right? So the Outer Space Treaty says every nation has the right, every person, there's a freedom of exploration and use of space. That's the fundamental. No appropriation of space. You cannot claim territory in space. That's fundamental. And you have to have due regard for each other's activities in space. Again, fundamental. So when you talk about having a hotel, what the Outer Space Treaty was negotiated in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and they said, okay, if you launch something into space, then you always retain control over it, period, control and jurisdiction. So if you have a hotel, the tricky part is they decided in their eminent wisdom to define the term launching state to mean 4 different things. So a launching state is the person who procures, or state that procures the launch. So imagine a company in Japan says, I want to build a satellite, and then I want to pay SpaceX to launch it. That's Japan becomes a launching state. Whoever actually physically, where the territory where it's launched from, so United States becomes a launching state. It could also be the facility where it's launched from. So for example, French Guiana has a French facility in it. And so if you launch from French Guiana, it would be French Guiana and France. And then anyway, you get the picture. So there's a lot of launching states. And so whoever asked the question was absolutely correct. If you have a space hotel, one of those 4 countries would be considered the launching state and responsible, and their laws would apply. It gets really tricky when you have, the space station currently government run. We have a wing built by Russia. We have a wing built by the United States. We have a wing built by Japan. And so literally in space, when you cross into those different wings, you're crossing into a different jurisdiction. So it can get really complex.
Fascinating.
But there's also one that says there are memes online that say the rich are already ready to leave Earth and live in space. Is this true? And do you know of any ongoing efforts to bring groups of people to space rather than I think this was in reference to Jeff Bezos going to space.
Absolutely. So it's a great question, and yes, right now space feels like it's for the very rich only. The inspiration for, I think, was $350 million. To go on Jeff Bezos's 10-minute tour is $250,000, for 10 minutes. And then I think the Branson is also the same price, maybe a little bit longer. So it feels like it's an elite kind of situation. But remember when cars first came out? Only the very rich had cars, and now everybody has a car. Only I remember having a black and white TV and being so excited. Now everyone has these big platforms, whatever. So you have to look. You have to be forward thinking about. You have to I don't know either man, but I am thankful for them. I think they're both egotistical, very arrogant, but I'm thankful for them because they are using their personal fortunes to do things to get humanity into space. They're not going to get me into space, but they're going to get you guys into space. It's going to be affordable for you to go to space. And so thank goodness there are people, because no government is going to spend that kind of money, taxpayer money on that, right? And the other thing is, we are very different now than we were 10, 15, 50 years ago. There's a lot of discussion about developing countries, about bringing cultural diversity into space with us. And so there is a Japanese entrepreneur who's bringing 8 people to space with him, I think, just selected. He's paying for all of them. So there is a lot of movement like that. The European Space Agency is looking for their first disabled astronaut, and so there's a real recognition. Look, what we learned from Apollo, why did the United States get to the moon before the Russians? Because we were diverse. We're a nation of immigrants, and yes, they looked like all white men, but they were white men from different parts of the world. And they, as we know from Hidden Figures, they're also Black women. So we as a species only survive if we're culturally diverse. It's the truth. We need that innovation. If we're all in the room and we all look alike and we all think alike, we're not going to get anywhere. It's the best, isn't it? Yeah.
So anyway,
And if I could, I really appreciate the comment that you made about the example of the automobile industry, right, in the market. And I think we could learn from these models. So, there's an advantage to late movers. So those of you out there, if you think, if you don't have the capital or you're not part of the in-group, what you begin thinking is long-term. So start positioning yourself using the late mover strategy if you want to be part of this economy and participate in it. So thank you for reminding us about how our business models could actually help inspire us to think differently and not feel defeated already with those who have already started as first movers.
it'll also be a lot cheaper, a lot safer.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I just wanted to comment too that right now I think Virgin Galactic selling $1 million tickets. So you guys sit next to Leonardo DiCaprio for one of the first space tours. But,
Oh, I haven't read that. Yeah.
and then
Yes. Yeah. Oh, do you have one?
yes,
Okay.
one just came in. It says, how big is the commercial space launch industry?
So the commercial space launch industry is not very big. It's a very smart student there,
Yes.
recognizing, there is not a need for a lot of launch vehicles that we're seeing. Jeff Bezos suing now to try and get it in with the government because the government awarded their civilian launch to SpaceX. I would say that is the biggest glut in terms of the space industry, is that launch. We need more people thinking about the payload that's going to go. We need more people thinking about what you're going to do when you get to the moon or get into space. So we need people who are going to figure out how to remove the debris from space, how to recycle it. I have a student who's thinking about creating foundries in space. Let's grab debris and then melt it down and then use it for something else and things like that. So there are, in the United States alone, I can count about 42 small satellite launch companies. Okay, they're not all going to survive. It's gonna keep funneling down. They're gonna, I was an M&A attorney they're just going to gobble each other up. But we do have the strengths. We have Rocket Lab out of New Zealand. And then the, sort of that next tier is trying to get into position. But there is definitely, I think we're going to see launches being a daily event, maybe multiple launches a day. But the economies of scale will be that there will be few launch companies, right? I mean, you've got to be able to build that iteration into your experience.
I love that question, because the question that was sitting in my mind is, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who want to get their foot in the door? So you have to create your opportunities sometimes. That's definitely a great start. But in addition to that, are there other ways that you could recommend our entrepreneurs can get their foot in the door? So if they come up with a product or an idea, how do you take it to the next level that will get them to the movers and shakers in the industry, I suppose?
So there's two paths. First, people don't realize it, but NASA actually gives away its patents for free. If you look on the NASA website and you look at their lists of patents and you come up with an idea for that technology, they will let you use it. And so you don't need to either build it, and you don't need to get that bottom line investment to get that license. So that is something that is really underserved by NASA. Every time I talk to somebody from NASA and the business development, that's always what they say is, we have all of this out there, just waiting for somebody to be innovative and figure it out. The other thing that's out there is remote sensing Earth observation data. We have so much data about the Earth, and we've only tapped like a little pinprick of what we can do with that data. So if you look around Guam, for example, and you think about, there's a picture of Guam taken every day since 1972. What would you do with that data? What can you do? How can you help Guam? How can you help construction here? How can you help family population growth here by looking at this raw data that you're getting from space? And you can do that with any of the remote sensing data that you get. As far as, how do you get your foot in the door? Space right now is still a very small community. And so I tell all of my students, I do have a lot of clients, get on LinkedIn, put your face out there, get on these. I know the webinars are tricky for you all here, but there are a lot of webinars from organizations based in Australia. Australia is just opened its space agency. Stephen Freeland is like me, spent 20 years in the business and became a space lawyer. He's doing webinars all the time. Get on the webinars and put your video on, because people like to see faces, and you are memorable if your face is seen. So if you have any interest in space or UAV technology, the communities are really small. Find those webinars, start popping up, start asking questions, and get on LinkedIn so your name becomes familiar. And I guarantee everybody wants to help somebody. We're at that point in the industry where it's competitive, but it's, oh yeah, what can I do to help? Who can I introduce you to?
I'm going to look for you, Michelle, and connect with you.
Yes,
on
please,
LinkedIn.
absolutely.
So we have a comment, one that says, agree that as entrepreneurs, we have to be forward thinking. Really encourages us to think outside the box, or in this case, outside the globe.
Nice. I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Well done, well done.
We have another question from one of our students. You mentioned before that the scope of space law is still relatively small, and you briefly touched on which countries have jurisdiction on certain issues occurring in space. As space law develops, there's bound to be conflicts among these countries and different opinions. Who will have the authority to determine the final rule over space? Kind of like the U.S. Supreme Court system.
So I just plug for space law. It's the most fun thing you can study ever. There's so much going on in space, and we literally have the Outer Space Treaty is literally our Magna Carta, and we have nothing else. So imagine that. Think about all the rules we can start making for space. Right now, it is international law. So how do you enforce international law? Well, we've seen you don't really do that, right? You sort of name and shame, and oh, you were bad, go stand on the other side of the Security Council. So it's really about that public opinion, that public stature. Um, Technically, there is an International Court of Justice. And so if there is a conflict in space, it will go to the International Court of Justice ultimately. We have not had any space law cases at the ICJ at this point in time because we've had 2 collisions in space. A Russian satellite collided with a commercial satellite, Iridium. They settled out of court. We had a Chinese ASAT test, but it shot down its own satellite. So but it created a debris path, and so there is a concern about that. And then a Russian satellite re-entered and spread nuclear waste across northern Canada, and that was also settled without going to court. But yeah, it would be settled in the International Court of Justice, and the laws regarding space continue to be evolved through the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. And guess what? There's also a United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. And so technically, if a little green man comes or a green woman comes and says, take me to your leader, you're supposed to take her to Simonetta De Pippo, the director of the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs. So
Interesting. Wow.
Space.
I am so fascinated. So fascinated.
And going back to drones, the drones are operated by a flight controller. With that in mind, are there any plans of implementing artificial intelligence to drones? If so, how could we benefit from drones?
So there are already autonomous drones, that you just plug in and you can let it go. You don't have to have any flight instructor pilot at all. The beauty of the autonomous drones is going to be like autonomous cars. Think about it. If you could, we had the picture of the taxi. That's an uncrewed vehicle that would just be programmed to take you to the next island or Rhoda perhaps or something. So that is really useful. I think that it's going to take a long time for people to embrace that. If you see what's happening with Tesla now, we're starting to get a lot more cases, even though they're technically not supposed to not be driven. People take their hands off the steering wheels and so forth. It's going to take a lot of comfort to get to that point. I mean, and when we think, trains are autonomous, but they're on tracks. So I think what we're going to see is autonomy in the maritime industry before we see it in the drone industry. And then once we get comfortable with it on the oceans, then we'll be more comfortable with it in the air.
One of our business ideas during the startup weekend Micronesia was actually to have some sort of drone facilitated delivery service because the islands are, there for the islands across Micronesia, there are little islands that are affiliated with it, so it kind of makes sense for them. So this is great to know that we're in alignment with this.
You mentioned that drone taxis are being created and are electronic for sustainable purposes. What are methods being tested to reduce the carbon footprint of space modules? Space travel seems like a great idea, but are the environmental impacts
They are not. And wow, forward thinking, bravo. Because everyone thinks about orbital debris and nobody really thinks about, because we don't have that many launches. Yes, and the launches have a very distinct impact because they're hitting the higher ozone layer. I don't know all the chemicals that we need, but there is a specific way that launches are eating away at ozone. And there is a concern, today we don't notice the difference, but all of a sudden it's going to be too late for us to do anything. So people are actually turning, Elon Musk is looking at using more sort of water-based, less toxic kind of propellants. And so this is, again, unlike cars, we are in a different age than we were. So people are thinking, and we do have laws covering how much we can pollute and so forth. A large part of the approval for Virgin Galactic here on Guam was that environmental risk factors, thinking about what it's going to do to the beautiful waters here and so forth. So people are thinking about that. Not enough people, I will say, are thinking about the impact of launch on our ozone. But there are starting to raise awareness of that.
We also have a personal question. What made you personally interested in space law as your particular field of practice? And what is your favorite thing about what you study and what you do for?
Oh, I'm a space lawyer, right? I mean, it's like, how much fun is that? So I am a child of Star Trek, yeah, Captain Kirk, there's no other captain. I'm just gonna put it out there. And I have a unique background. My parents are both first generation Americans from Poland and from China. And they both became US diplomats. So I grew up all around the world. And I never, I had a distinct family. And so the Star Trek family looked like my family to me. And so I really embraced that. But then I went to, college and law school, and, I had to go and do the big M&A thing and Master of the Universe. And then my older son, when he was young, said, Mom, you're a pretty good lawyer, right? And I said, well, I like to think so. And he said, I really want to mine asteroids when I grow up. And I read this book that says this concept of property in space is really unclear. Do you think you can figure that out so I can do that? And I was like, huh, who knew? And I looked into it and I just fell in love all over again with space. And I decided I spent enough time making money on corporate deals for other people. And I went back to school at the age of 50, you can do it, to get my master's of law in air and space law. That was 5 years ago. And yeah, I haven't looked back. It's what do I love about it the most is there are literally no boundaries. I love teaching space law because, when I think about you all here paying attention to me or watching me and the ideas that I know I'm putting into your heads, and what you can bring to space is what's the most exciting aspect of it for me. I have students who like come up with these ideas that I just think, well, that's oh, okay, maybe that would work. And so that's, I think, it sounds like a cliche, but space law is really boundless. I mean, it's very fulfilling because we are literally laying the groundwork for our spacefaring future. Like we are literally creating our future for ourselves. And to me, that's just an incredible feeling.
That's so inspiring. I tell you, I think I'm going to be 6 years behind you on this track, but it's never too late, you said.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
when I retire, I'm going to look into that. Anyway, I have a question. So I've heard you talk about the courses that you teach. For the University of Guam, what steps might we take towards preparing programs or related activities that will help build a position within the space economy, help prepare, capacity building for the space economy? Are there some things that maybe we should focus on as the next steps to get there?
So I think you guys have a very strong Earth observation group, and I think it would be really interesting for the business administration people to start working with them and thinking about ways to actually commercialize that Earth observation data to get it. If you have people here who can manipulate's the wrong word, but build the AI to find the information that you need and sell it to Indonesia, for example, or to Singapore, places that need it. I think that would be really powerful. The space economy is like any other economy in many ways, right? You just have to think bigger. And so, I tell my JD students, don't take a course in space law and think you're going to be general counsel for SpaceX. No, space is looking for people who can understand corporations and how corporations work. It really helps to bring that enthusiasm for space. But if you just add in your class one case study of Rocket Lab, and just sort of remind people that these opportunities exist. The other thing is space is very heavily regulated, and so understanding how the federal government works, whether for drones or for space, is really important. So I always stress, get a course in that administrative law, understand how export controls work, understand how procurement works. That's fundamental right now to space and drones.
That's such great information. Thank you. I'm inspired. We have another initiative. Oh, she's just intriguing me right now. So I love it. Thank you.
That's one from our staff. Let me ask that one first. Have you ever been to space?
Have I ever been to space? In my dreams? Yeah. It's still a little too expensive for me. And I suspect that it will not be that I will not make it, but I hope. I actually, we worked very hard to protect the blueprint, and I really look forward to having somebody, not when I say my family, I mean like somebody from space call me and say, hey, Michelle, I'm looking at that blueprint. Wow, it's so cool. Thank you for saving it.
I think it's safe to say that more than a few of us are trying to find a way to get into space. But what would you say to any budding space law enthusiasts in our audience, and for those who actually just want to, explore the universe? Do you have any like pieces of advice for them? Tips?
So you can take our courses online at the University of Mississippi. We have a graduate certificate program where you can learn all about space law. There are a lot of free webinars out there. There are a lot of, if you go to McGill, if you go to something called the Secure World Foundation, you can log into the UN Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. There are all sorts of capacity building events out there for free. I do personally, I do once each semester, I'll do an intro to space law. I think I'm going to do that on Friday here, Friday morning, just sort of what is space law? Why would you study it? But looking for those webinars, if you sign up for like space.com or Politico Space, then you'll get emails in your daily in your inbox that will tell you what's going on in space, and it's just a way to stay on. And again, LinkedIn, follow space people, and you'll get the news, and you'll get their opinions about it, and you can start forming opinions, and you can start joining the conversation. And again, there's never in any universe, unless like if you make a comment, is somebody going to be like, that's really stupid? Well, maybe on Twitter, but not on LinkedIn, and not from the space community. We really, treasure every opinion. It is our
Probably
space.
even more harsh in space. But, so we're actually approaching the fun part. So
Yes.
I saved the last question for you who wants to.
The coveted question.
Yes.
What did
Ask every,
Right. So I have two actually. Yeah. So I guess we're interested in two things. One, what book are you reading today and now? And second, what advice would you give to our faculty, our students, members of our audience in terms of the work that you do and the future of the space economy and the industries related to it?
So I listen to books when I walk, and I read books on Kindle. So I'm reading The Three-Body Problem, by the Chinese author. It's a science fiction. And I just finished Dune because I'm the only space nerd in the world who hadn't read it before. And I thought I had to read it before the movie came out. So I'm actually, I tend as far as if you want to read a good book about space or something, I really find that things are moving so quickly. It's much better to stick to journal articles, magazine articles. I can't, I can say, my good friend Martin Elvis just wrote a book about mining asteroids, but honestly, it's probably already obsolete, right? Because so much has changed. So I love the science fiction. In terms of bringing space into your lives, I think to every day remember that you are already using space. We can't have this Zoom call without space. You can't go to the ATM without space. Think about every day, think about how you have used space or how you have benefited from space. And then it just becomes natural to you. I think after I'm done saving heritage in outer space, my next effort's going to be to bring space into the classroom from kindergarten on. Because kindergartners should know, everybody should know, oh, when I do this on my phone, there's a satellite up there doing this and that. And the lack of knowledge, I think, about how important space is to our economy as a world, not just as a nation, is really devastating and could be really helpful. And so I would just say every day, just bring it up and remember.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been such a fascinating session, probably one that I find very inspiring, and I think our students and our audience find inspiring. So I'm definitely going to read up on those resources you shared with us, and I hope that you won't be a stranger the next time we come to you, or the next time you come to visit Guam. Stop by, let us know, and we'd love to hear more about the heritage preservation project that you have for space. I think that's another fascinating topic. And so, yes, thank you. So on behalf of the School of Business and Public Administration, we want to present you with this certificate of appreciation for your time here with us during your vacation. Sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your thoughts about the space economy and the UCV. Uncrewed vehicle industry. So we appreciate
Thank you so
your
much.
time with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have some swag as well for you. So maybe you
Thank
can
you.
support the University of Guam.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank
you so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I really, really had fun. And I hope, I will give my email address out, and I answer emails, and I'm on LinkedIn, so find me. So
Excellent.
thank you.
We will. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you found it valuable and meaningful and inspiring. So have a great rest of the day. Stay safe and stay well. Adios.